talk about what trauma actually is, right? Because I think,
Yes.
I
It's
think
another
that,
surprising thing, this one.
right. So, with people that I talk to, I've best been able to simplify it as big T trauma, like capital T trauma,
Yeah.
and then small T trauma. And so, as a anything, and this is sort of, I hope I guess issuing a trigger warning at this point that we will be talking about some, in some degrees, a certain triggering material, but as
Exactly.
a, anything from somebody that has experienced child abuse or sexual abuse or witnessed like heinous crimes or war, those are big T traumas. But then those do not, that does not, it's not an exclusive group where you have to qualify it under one of these sort of like massive
No.
events to be considered, for lack of a better word, a traumatized individual.
I'm glad you're bringing us back to this. This is a really important framing. So let me explain that to clarify, like big T and little t, there's actually two categories in big T. Now the first one is developmental trauma. This happens when your lack of care from your either abuse directly, like physical or otherwise, or neglect, which is another kind of abuse, while you're developing as a child, sets you up for massive challenges because you miss developmental goalposts, right? That happened to me, and that's the hardest trauma to heal because it's many little traumas over many, many, many years, typically. Then there's events like war, mugging or rape or something horrible like that. That can be big T, but that's easier to heal because the person may have felt safe before that happened. And I'm going to explain what trauma actually is in a second. It has everything to do with safety. And then you have little things like maybe you don't really have much trouble except for elevators, right? That's much easier to heal because you can actually even think your way through that stuff to some degree. So now let's talk about what trauma actually is. So one of the things that Polyvagal corrects is that trauma is not the event. Now it's hard to think, people, what do you mean? And the reason why it's not the event is because there are many, many people who have gone through horrible experiences and have not got traumatized by them. And that's shown very distinctly in war. So war is, let's say you have 100 soldiers in battle, same battle, and let's say they all survive. So maybe they're injured or whatever, and then you look at them over the next 30 years when they get back home, and a certain percentage will have PTSD, and the other people don't. So the event didn't cause the trauma.
Yeah.
What caused the trauma is lack of resources, which is resources to digest the experience in a safe way. And usually the people that show up to those situations actually have a lack of resources when they got to that situation. And this is the part that's hard for people to understand. So the event is not the issue. That's why someone could be traumatized by something that would seem completely benign to everyone else. That's why a lot of traumatized people are shamed into thinking that they're just exaggerating, or that malingering is the technical term for that. And it's used, it's very common for people to be accused of that. So what trauma, so let's think, so it's resources, okay, safety, what does that mean? You need to be safe with other people to feel safe by yourself or in a situation that's challenging. And also, if you don't have the right people to connect with after the event, that also can be a big thing too. So people in your, social resources is a huge piece. But the other piece is the vibrancy of your body, because your body has to respond to your environment both in and out. And if it doesn't have the right resources, so imagine you have a virus like COVID, where you're already feeling like you're drowning if you have it too bad. And then on top of it, you have another challenge. Well, you're spent already, like your body can't take out anymore. So then it overloads. So what trauma is you're so overloaded that it shoves you way back down into that lizard brain ancient circuit of shutdown. And if you're down there too long, the system can't switch back on to safety anymore. You can't find that circuit anymore. And that's what big T is. Because the difference between big T and little t is big T is constant. That's what I had. You never feel safe, no matter what. And maybe for a few minutes here and there are very super controlled situations, but there's no adaptability. You can't roam through your life and expand. You're always trying to protect this little world that you've created. And anyone that wants you to do anything different, you freak out. So that's big T. That's PTSD. So that's the basic framing of what trauma actually is. And so therefore the way to get well is to build up resources that allow you to expand yourself, to be more resilient in the face of life and all its unfairness and challenges, right?
Yeah.
And instead of trying to control your environment, because typically what we want to do when we're traumatized is I want to control everything. You're like the evil Lord who says everyone has to do what I want, otherwise I'm not okay. And that's not what you want. What you want is to be adaptable, as adaptable as humanly possible, because that means that you can do more good in the world. You don't need as much. You don't have to be propped up. You can actually help other people come up. And that's the gift. You get well enough and you become a resource for other people, for their own regulation and their own expansion.